This stray dog was running down the street with a bone in his mouth, but he accidentally bumped into a passerby. The only lunch he had was knocked out of his hand. If he doesn't find it, he'll go hungry again. Just as he was about to go looking for it, a troop was passing by. The bread on the woman's lips makes her mouth water. Recruit Robert saw him in the crowd. He knew the dog must be starving, so he took a biscuit from his body and threw it at him. Without hesitation, the dog ate it all. But one biscuit is not enough to satisfy his hunger. He had the bright idea to follow the group. He thought that if he followed Robert, he would get something to eat. Little did he know that this unintentional action, that's what led to the legend of his life. This is a true story. In the end, he was not only awarded numerous medals, he was promoted to the highest military rank in the world. But the beginning was always full of twists and turns. He followed the soldier's footsteps to the barracks gate. He was turned away by 2 soldiers on guard duty, seeing that he wasn't wanted, so he turned around and left. Soon after, it smelled a scent and walked along the wall. Through the cracks in the boards, he suddenly saw Robert training inside. The dog is excitedly digging a hole. He managed to get through the gap and into the fence. Just inside the barracks, he was attracted by the big ribs in the kitchen. But before he could get a mouthful, the chef came with a kitchen knife to chase him away. If the dog hadn't reacted in time, he could have been one of the dishes. He ran out of the kitchen in a panic. He ran into a soldier's leg, and upon closer inspection, the soldier was the one he was looking for. The dog is overjoyed by this coincidence. He can't help but express his joy with a bark, and his barking immediately attracted the attention of the instructor. Looking at the stray dog that suddenly appeared, he asked the soldier whose dog it was. The dog seemed to understand his question. It swept its eyes towards Robert. Robert's eyes flickered and he panicked. He urges the dog to leave. To Robert's surprise, the instructor didn't give him an expulsion order. Instead, he expects him to take care of the dog. And then, at the instructor's command, the dog was so serious that he was posing like a soldier. Seeing such a funny dog, even the instructor couldn't help but laugh. But as time goes by, the dog starts to get familiar with the soldiers. No matter what the instructor says, he can always perform the corresponding action. In normal training, he's just like any other soldier, and he's also a good helper. Whenever the soldiers finish the shooting training, it will bring the target to the instructor for inspection. Gradually, the dog has been fully integrated into their lives. Robert named him Stubby, with a name of his own. Stubby circled around to show his happiness. That day, the general suddenly came to visit the barracks. When he saw Stubby, he said this was a barracks, not a zoo. He asked where the dog came from. This time Robert didn't hesitate. He replied with a firm look in his eyes that it was his dog. He gave a military salute. After seeing Robert's gesture, Stubby followed suit. Seeing such a smart dog, the general praised him as a good soldier, and let him stay in the barracks as a mascot. However, what was meant to be was meant to be. A few months later, the general suddenly gave the order to go to the front line of the war. Faced with a battlefield full of danger, Robert became frightened. Luckily, Stubby was always there for him. It was only when Stubby stayed by his side that Robert found some solace. After a long journey, they finally reached the front line of the battlefield. The conditions were worse than they had imagined. The smell of death was all around them. It was a moment that sent chills down their spines. Their comrades who have been guarding here, all of them are thin and listless. Soon after arriving here, Stubby did what he did best, to get rid of the pests that were eating the soldiers' rations. After a long night on the ground, the first rays of the morning sun, but often it's the calm before the storm. Suddenly, an artillery shell hits. The men around them were hit in an instant. In the face of this horror, Stubby became terrified. Just then, another shell came in. Robert quickly pulled Stubby underneath him as the smoke cleared, but they were both safe. Soon enough, Stubby realized something was wrong. Immediately, he felt less afraid, and took courage and ran towards the pile of earth. After digging up the buried soldier, he barked to alert the others. Luckily, he was spotted in time. The wounded soldier survived. Before leaving, he thanked Stubby. Soon after, Robert and the others were sent to scout the enemy camp, and here they found out what was going on. The enemy is trying to win by firing gas bombs. There was no time to lose. They need to inform the rear as soon as possible. But on the way back, one of the enemy soldiers was already in ambush. At that moment, Stubby's sense of smell picked up a hidden enemy. Just as he pulled the trigger on Robert, Stubby quickly jumped on him, but unfortunately, their horse ran off in a panic. The situation was critical. Robert quickly pulled out his gas mask. He told Stubby to go back and tell everyone. Stubby knew what he was doing. He quickly ran towards the base camp. Soon after, the enemy fired the first gas shell. With a loud bang, the sky is filled with green toxic gas. Thankfully, Stubby ran back to the trench in time. He quickly mouths the soldier's gas mask. Then he barks at him. The soldier on guard duty realizes what Stubby means. He took precautions to protect himself and gave the alarm signal. And then, Stubby runs to the back of the barracks. He took his mask out of his bag and alerted the others. With Stubby's help, they survived the crisis. At the same time, the enemy has fired a second gas bomb. This time, the gas is headed heading towards the neighborhood. Stubby arrives at the village as quickly as he can. He looks to the sky and barks frantically to alert the villagers. The inhabitants also realized something was wrong. As they look into the sky, the gas is traveling fast in this direction. They're quick to take precautions. They put on their masks and close the doors and windows, just as Robert and the others arrive in time to pick up Stubby. The men wet towels to make a simple mask, then they put it over Stubby's face, and in an instant, the poisonous fumes that were coming from the village were instantly enveloping it. Luckily, as the gas drifted away, the villagers were protected in time. For a moment, Stubby became the hero of the village. People came out to thank him for saving their lives. Soon in another battle, they ran into a problem. One of their teammates was trapped in enemy range. At any moment, his life would be in danger. Stubby didn't hesitate. He jumped out of the trench. In the midst of enemy fire, he continued to search for his comrades without fear. Luckily, he was able to find his way out. He found his comrade in a crater not far away, but now he's wounded and can't move. Stubby immediately barks to the rear for support. When he gets the exact location, the commander immediately gives the order to fire smoke grenades. Under the cover of smoke, they were able to retrieve their comrade. Seeing such a brave Stubby, Robert was very pleased. Since then, Stubby became the talk of the town. He became a role model for the others. To thank Stubby for alerting the gas bombs, a special coat was made for him. His comrades also made him a proper gas mask. A few months later, their war had reached a feverish stage. The enemy tried to hang on to their lives. They began to attack them. In the middle of the battle, 3 enemy soldiers tried to take advantage of the chaos. Stubby decided to take the initiative. He ran towards them, despite the danger, and when the enemy caught up with him, Robert and his men were already in ambush. With their cooperation, they were able to take control of these 3 soldiers. Soon after, the enemy threw a grenade into the trench. The grenade landed right next to the soldier. In the nick of time, Stubby rushes out and picks up the grenade. There was an explosion. Stubby was lying on the ground, dying. Because of his injuries, Stubby has to be taken to the hospital for treatment. Ever since Stubby left, Robert misses it every minute of every day. He's even had visions from time to time, but in the end, he was disappointed. A few months later, Stubby was recovering in the hospital, and he missed Robert all the time, so he left the hospital. He set out to find Robert, but after a long time, he came back to his old place. There's no sign of Robert here, except for the ruins, but he didn't give up. With his injured body, he continued to search, but Robert's condition was not good. He contracted the flu during the march. He could die at any time. Just when he was about to give up, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The moment he saw Stubby, Robert regained the courage to live. With Stubby by his side, his condition began to improve. A few months later, they were back on the battlefield. During a break, Stubby sensed something was wrong. He used his sense of smell. Soon he found the suspect not far away. After a tussle, Stubby is outmatched. He's in danger of losing his life. Luckily, Robert and the others caught up with him just in time. It turns out that he's really a spy. He's been sneaking in here to get military secrets. Because of Stubby's bravery, Stubby was awarded the rank of sergeant, and the story of Stubby soon appeared in the headlines. Not long after, they finally waited for the good news. The enemy army had announced its surrender. This also meant the end of the war. After years of hard fighting, they finally returned in triumph a few weeks later. As soon as they stepped off the ship, Stubby was adored by the people, and his legendary life as a dog has been celebrated by the locals for hundreds of years.